Time for our GMC Sierra tweet of the night. Comes from National Baseball writer Jason Stark, who says Kyle Schwarber this year, home run in his first at-bat on opening day, home run in his first home at-bat after the All-Star break, home run in his first at-bat in the last home game of the season, home run in his first home at-bat of the NLCS. Some guys just know how to announce their presence. I'll give you another one, Kyle Schwarber related. Remember way back in 2015 in the wild card game, that home run he hit at PNC Park? Did it land yet? I'm not sure. But yeah, he knows how to hit some home runs in huge moments. 412-575-2600 on the Borders and Borders hotline. Got a tweet here from Zach who asks if the Packers, or I should say he says, if the Packers really want Chase Claypool, they should be willing to offer a first-round pick for him. Yeah, good luck with that. I don't think that's happening. Let me give you some perspective here. If the Carolina Panthers could not get a first-round pick for Christian McCaffrey, Steelers aren't getting one for Chase Claypool. Just providing you some perspective. Now, in fairness, the Panthers did get a good slew of picks for Christian McCaffrey, but none of them were a first-rounder. I think you got a second, third, and a fourth in next year's draft, and a fifth in 2024. If you can start looking early day 3, late day 2, that's probably your wheelhouse. Because it's not necessarily about what you can get for a guy. It's about what his value is at the moment. And it took 6 games for Chase Claypool's trade value to even start to move the needle. That's not first-round pick worthy as far as receivers go. Now, if you can try to get 2 picks back like Carolina got for Robbie Anderson for moving him to Arizona because he had a falling out with the coach, that might be a place to start. I don't think a first-round pick may happen. If you can get 2 day 3 picks or maybe a day 2 and a day 3, I consider that to be a huge win as far as trying to trade for Chase Claypool. Now, the one thing I will say if you're the Steelers, you know Green Bay is acting from an area of desperation because they need somebody that can be a playmaking receiver on that team. Kind of makes you wonder if, you had money to pay a star receiver and not let him leave in free agency. You might have been okay. Funny how that works. Ozzy in Pittsburgh, you're on the Nightly Sports Call.
Hey, thanks for taking my call.
Appreciate you.
I'm a little bit confused here. I'm 5-1 in my fantasy, and I got Najee, but I'm afraid to play him. Do you think they're going to use him a lot?
If you're asking me for fantasy purposes, that's just, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. Are you in a PPR league? Because that's a key element. If you're in a PPR league, maybe. Because the one thing we've noticed, if the Steelers can't get Najee going running the ball, they will try to get him going in the passing game. So I won't say don't start him. I will say if you aren't in a PPR league, I might think twice. If you have Najee in a PPR league, I'd give it some thought. I'd think about starting him. Now, here's the difference here. If you're in a PPR league and you start Najee, it might benefit you more if the Steelers are behind in the second half because they're going to be more prone to throw the football, which means it could be more receptions for Najee and possibly more yards. And in a PPR league, that's just like catnip to a fantasy owner. So that's the deciding factor I will give you. If you are in a PPR league, give Najee a shot. What's the worst that can happen? I will also say this, though. Running backs in fantasy this year, it's been kind of strange because you've had a couple that have gotten hurt. Sorry, I got a little bit of a hiccups there. But you got some guys who have had injury issues, and there's the Alvin Kamaras of the world who can make impact in the passing game. Then you got guys like Ramondre Stevenson who are just going to run the ball 30 times a game and probably get you 90 to 100 yards and probably a touchdown or 2. There's just so many different kinds of fantasy backs now, and that's not counting the Christian McCaffreys of the world who people really wanted. This is a terrible year. I'll say this much. It's a terrible year to own Jonathan Taylor as a fantasy running back because he was the number 1 guy coming into the season, and there's a lot of disappointed owners who have Jonathan Taylor, including our producer Steve Benko, who tells me in his ear that he has Jonathan Taylor on his fantasy team. He's not happy about that either. But it reminds me a lot of maybe the previous couple years how folks just flocked to get Saquon Barkley, or they flocked to get Christian McCaffrey and they got hurt early in the season. Kind of has that effect to it. Running backs these days, if you can find a couple that are useful and that are reliable, you're probably doing okay. I'll give you 2 guys who have been very reliable. Dalvin Cook, Josh Jacobs. I have those 2 guys on the same team in one league, 5-1 in that league. Just saying. 412-575-2600 on the Borders and Borders hotline. I mentioned Pitt and Louisville tomorrow. I mentioned Penn State and Minnesota tomorrow. Very intrigued by both of those games. Penn State being at home in a whiteout game with Minnesota coming to town. PJ Fleck is a coach who gets his team up for these kinds of games, knowing that they're coming in as the underdog, probably a little bit harder to just write them off as a team that Penn State could beat. But at the same time, after that loss against Michigan, I think Penn State is going to come in really trying to get refocused. They missed a lot of opportunities in the second half against Michigan. I think that offense needs to get back on track. Got a tweet from Randy who said, he said that 30 minutes is not enough time. Please extend the show to at least 1 hour. I'll make you a deal. If I could do it with someone else, I don't want to do a solo show for an hour. I got water down here, but it's not enough for me to do a show for an hour. We got Mark on Twitter who says, back in the day, if you won the toss, coach would say, take the ball. You wanted to get ahead. Always play better with a lead. Now everyone always defers. I want to keep Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle off the field. Mark, you bring up something I tell people a lot. The best thing you can do, especially if you have a strong offense, take the ball first. Because if you know you can get downfield and score on another team's defense, it only benefits you. And plus your defense, like you said, you're going to play better with the lead. Remember a few years back, I think it was a playoff game or maybe it was a regular season game. New England came to town and the Steelers were playing the Patriots. New England won the coin toss. They wanted the ball. They got the ball and scored on their first drive. And I don't think the Steelers ever really got themselves back on track in that game because they knew their defense could play a lot more aggressively if they were able to build a lead. And I don't think the Steelers put together a scoring drive in that first quarter. So New England had a 2 or 3 possession lead. And after that, they pretty much coasted the rest of the way because they knew the Steelers couldn't catch them. I'm with Mark on this one. If I have an offense that I know can score points or has scored points pretty frequently, I'm going to want the ball first. Am I that confident with the Steelers offense? I don't know. They scored on their first drive last week against Tampa. Granted, that was at home. Maybe it's a shot worth taking. That's a more of a difficult situation. If I'm Buffalo, if I'm Kansas City, if I'm Philly, every time I win the coin toss, give me the ball. I want it. Travis in the South Hills, you're on the Nightly Sports Call.
Thanks for taking my call.
Appreciate you.
About Pitt, if Pitt goes out and beats Louisville and then beats North Carolina and Syracuse upsets Clemson, do you see the Pitt-Syracuse game being a nationally televised game?
I could see it probably being on ESPN, but not because of the ramifications. I think it probably could have been on ESPN regardless, honestly. I will say this much. If that Pitt-Syracuse game ends up with the scenario you lay out, Pitt beats Louisville or Georgia Tech, which I expect them to do anyway, to be honest with you. If Syracuse somehow upsets Clemson, that game becomes bigger for Syracuse than it does for Pitt. Because if you're Syracuse, you cannot afford to lose on your way out after that. Even if it's not Pitt, even if it's someone else. Everybody else in that division is probably going to be looking at you, and you're going to have to keep your head on a swivel. I think it'll be a lot different from then on out. So I'm iffy about that one. I'm not sure. I guess I'm trying to skirt the question. I would expect it to be a nationally televised game. But even if Syracuse didn't beat Clemson, it still might be a nationally televised game. I think that's a better way I want to describe that. Jacob on Twitter says, thoughts on Riverhound's playoff game on the road in Birmingham. I'm just excited to see this team playing in a playoff game for a change and having a shot to play in one. They've had some really terrible luck in playoff matches the past couple of years. It was the year they couldn't even get on the field because the whole team had COVID, so they couldn't play in the playoff match. And I'm also glad, I want to say it's Louisville, they always get stuck playing within the playoffs. They don't have to deal with them this season. So the fact that they're not dealing with Louisville makes me feel a lot better going on to face Birmingham. It's really tough to call it because it seems like the Hounds have so much crazy luck in the playoffs, and it's never good. So I will say that their luck is probably due to change here. The one thing I do like about the Hounds is they do have strong showings on the road as far as not giving up too many goals. I think they're a stronger defensive team than they probably get credit for. Can they get goals early in matches and then let their defense close things out? I'm curious to see about that. But like I said before, they've had some really rotten luck in the playoffs over the years. So let's see if they can actually get themselves where more of a ceteris paribus situation, more all things being equal, where they can actually get an opportunity to play. I love what those guys do. I love Kennardo Forbes. I love Robbie Mertz. I love Russell Cicerone, and I love what those guys do. I'm really confident in the back end, too. The goalkeeper is actually pretty good, the young man from Jamaica. I'm always optimistic about this Hounds team. I've been optimistic since the coaching change, since they brought us some new talent. They brought some guys back. It's just a matter of can they get some of those breaks that they haven't gotten in years past in the playoffs. We got to take another break. We will wrap up when we come back. Stick around.